There. Happy Sunday. I hope you're having a great weekend and that this is a lovely day wherever you happen to be. It's certainly gorgeous here and it's going to be mild, not terribly hot. I think it's going to be a great afternoon to sit out on the patio and get some reading done. But before that, I'm really excited about the author who's going to join me in a moment. He's somebody that I just discovered, and this is one of the great things about getting on email lists, being on Instagram, and interacting with a lot of different folks about literature, because I get emails all the time from publishers and authors and publicists telling me about books coming out, and I frequently find authors whose work I've never been familiar with before. I haven't read their books, and the next thing you know, they go on my auto read list, which probably is as long as the ceiling to the floor in this room, if you want to know the truth. And that's how I found this gentleman. And I'm just delighted because he agreed to speak with me. And his book is magical. I don't have a better word for it. It's The House of Now and Then. I'm sorry it's backwards because Instagram does that. And isn't that a beautiful cover? I'm going to ask him about that artwork, among other things. And when I looked him up on the internet and I found his bio, I love this sentence. You got to listen to this. This is great. Edward Underhill grew up in the suburbs of Wisconsin, where he could not walk to anything, so he had to make up his own stories. Now, come on. That's a brilliant sentence. Doesn't that just evoke so many images for you of this young person in Wisconsin in some kind of a outskirts of a city and wanting to get somewhere, maybe a bookstore or the library, and having to walk and entertain themselves? It just evokes a whole picture in my mind, and I bet you it does in yours. So we're going to talk about that as well. And he's a musician, which is something we have in common, so I want to hear about that too. So let me ask him to join us real quickly, and we can get... Hopefully that works. Oh, it worked. Hi!
Hello.
It
Hi.
worked, and it worked fast.
Good.
I love when the technology cooperates, right?
It's always very nice when it cooperates. Yes.
Yeah, because Instagram doesn't always. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
I am so glad you said yes, because you probably see me tagging you all over Instagram. I can stalk people from time to time. I just couldn't put it down. First of all, it's beautiful. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
So happy I found you. And once I found your bio, I was just talking about this opening sentence. But let's go back for a moment. This is not your first book. I don't know where I've been. I've been on some other planet, apparently.
No, it's not my first book. My first book came out in 2023. It was this one. I have it right here.
Okay,
All is
hold
the
it up.
Almost.
Okay. And another great cover.
Yes, I've been very lucky with covers. My publishers have always gotten me amazing cover artists, which is wonderful.
Okay.
So yeah, I started writing young adult books, and I have 3 young adult books. All is
Okay.
the
Do you have
Almost.
all of them? Hold them up.
Yes. I do have all of them.
Come on, we got to sell books here, buddy.
This Day Changes Everything. This is my second one.
Okay.
I actually am not sure I have a copy of In Case You Read This here, which is bad of me. I'm not sure. My books like float around and I'm never quite sure where they are.
Yeah.
But In Case You Read This is my third one. It's also a very wonderful cover. And then I have 2 books for adults. The In Between Bookstore, which came out last year.
Okay.
And is also kind of like The House of Now and Then. It's also like a magical realism book. It's about a trans man who's on the cusp of turning 30, and he goes back to his small hometown where he grew up. And when he walks into the bookstore where he used to work in high school, he goes through a time slip and encounters his younger self behind the register. So it's sort of like the book version of If You Could Tell Your Younger Self Anything, What Would It Be?
Oh, I've got to get that for my book club. I'm sold. I got to get it.
Yeah, it's very much a book club type of book. And then The House of Now and Then, which just came out in May.
And I found this because a publisher reached out and said, "Hey, would you like a copy of this book?" And I was like, "Okay." And I'm such a dork sometimes. I read the synopsis, and then the book came, and I went, "Okay, this cover. I got to read this book." And there's parts of the plot that then were surprises to me because
Yeah,
I didn't read it that carefully. I just knew I wanted to. And sometimes that's more fun,
yeah, yeah.
you
No,
know?
I love a reader. I love being able to I don't want to know everything about a book before I go in. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just so delightful. All right. So now I'm going to order the other book this afternoon. My poor book club, they don't realize that they're booked up for about the next 2 years. But anyway, I keep showing up and going, here's your next book, girls. Okay. Tell me about growing up in Wisconsin. You had to entertain yourself, I'm assuming, when you couldn't walk anywhere. Dear God, did that mean you couldn't get to the library?
Uh, Not by myself for a long time. Yeah. I lived in this sort of small town slash suburb. Had train tracks running through it, and the library was on the other side of the train tracks.
Oh, okay.
So eventually, I got old enough to kind of bike there by myself, and it was not a short bike ride, but I could do it. Um, and then eventually I got old enough to drive. And when you grow up in sort of small Midwest, your parents are just like, all right, you got your license, you're out the door. We don't want to drive you anywhere anymore.
Right.
Um, so yes, I was eventually able to get myself to the library. And then I still remember when interlibrary loan came to our town, and then suddenly I could also get books from a much larger library sort of the next town over.
Right.
And that was very exciting because my library where I grew up was very, very small. So I didn't have a huge selection. But I was there a lot. I was definitely a library kid growing up. I was always checking
Me
things
too.
out from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have a wonderful librarian that you knew that you could go in and hang out and
I
talk to? And
I didn't really. I
mm,
didn't, and I'm not sure if it was just that I was shy and introverted, or if it was that I feel like at least at the first library where my town library, they didn't really they had a dedicated kids section, but they also didn't
yeah.
really have like a teen. I'm not sure they had a teen librarian on staff. It wasn't that kind of situation. Um, so no, I was really just kind of browsing the shelves and pulling stuff off by myself. And then I also my parents didn't buy a lot of books when I was growing up, and so I remember I somehow just found Howl's Moving Castle, which is this wonderful book by Diana Wynne Jones. It was kind of the first book that I read where I was just like, "Oh my God, this is so good! I want to write something this good." Like that was kind of the book that I think pushed me more into writing.
Huh?
Um, and that book just lived at my house for like a year. Like I would return it when it was due, and then I would go back the next day and check it out again.
Yep.
So I'm pretty sure I just every checkout was just me for a long time over and over
Yeah.
with that book.
I had a couple of those that I did that with too. So how old were you when that was going on, when that you were reading that book and getting the writing bug?
Probably like 11 or 12. I started writing before that. I think it was I loved making up stories. I loved games of pretend. And I think when I was a kid, I was constantly pretending to be someone else, like a character in a book or a character in a movie. Um, but I think before that, I was the writing I would do is oh, I'm going to write a book. And I would basically get stuck at I would draw the cover, and that would kind of be the end of it. Um, but yeah, after that, I writing more, and I wrote my first novel, I think, when I was 14, which it was not good. I mean,
Right.
it was very much more or less Star Trek fan fiction, I think. But I kept going. I kept writing a lot. I think once I had done that, it just that kind of clicked in my brain. I don't think I'm good at writing short stories. I've always been a thinking in sort of the novel, the longer arc story. And so I just, yeah, I kept writing kind of, all the way through high school and all the way through college. When I was in college, I had um, sort of a serialized story that would run in a campus magazine.
Oh,
Yeah. And then I think after that, I kind of decided, oh, wouldn't it be fun? It would be cool to try to get something published. I had no idea what I was doing. This was sort of right before like Twitter and Instagram were like really a thing. So I wasn't aware of sort of an online writing community. I was just kind of trucking along by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I had an agent interested in something when I was about 22. And he had some suggestions for like things. He like, okay, well, if we change these things, I think I could sell this. And then like I I feel like there are more things I want to change. Like I feel like this isn't quite ready for publication in my mind. And so I basically said thanks, but no thanks. I'm not ready. Um, and I'm still really glad that I did that. I was writing queer books at the time, but I wasn't writing trans characters. I didn't think that there was any, that there was any space to do that. And I kind of went off and did a whole music career instead. And then, it was sort of after like 2015, 2016, I started going, okay, I'm actually going to try to do this again. I really miss writing. And felt like I was writing stuff that was much more authentically me. And yeah, so I like started picking it back up. And then in 2020, I got an agent and then sold a book in early 2021.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
Yes, I guess so.
So I want to hear about your musical pursuits because I don't know if you can, I'm going to move a little bit so you can see my embarrassingly awful piano.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
But if you're from Wisconsin, you will appreciate this because now I'm much older than you, of course. We were from South Dakota originally. South Dakota, yeah. And Norwegian, yeah. And the piano salesman came through at some point because this little teeny tiny town of, oh God, I think maybe 1,000 people at most. Like one grocery store, one restaurant, out in the flat prairie. You get it, right? My mother had always wanted to play the piano, so my sister was 8 years older, so they got her going on this horrible Kimball spinet because what would a traveling piano salesman have but a spinet from Kimball, right? And then, of course, 8 years later, here I come, and I wanted to play desperately, and I can't get rid of it. It's so out of tune, and nobody will tune it. It's worthless, right? It's blonde, it's got that 1950s thing, and I just can't bring myself to junk it because I've pounded it for so many thousands of hours, 10 years of lessons. So were you a piano kid when you weren't trying to get to the library? Were you home having the lessons?
I was a cello kid. I started playing cello when I was 5.
You were a string player.
I was a string player. Yes, I mean, I also play the piano, mostly self-taught is what I use for composing, which is sort of the other thing that I do.
Right.
But yes, I was a cello kid, and I went to college for music.
Yes.
And basically like in my wrists in college, and so I dropped the performance aspect. I graduated with a degree in composition. But that is where a lot of all of the almost, which is my debut young adult book, is about a kid who always comes second in the piano competitions that he's in, and it's sort of like it's both a YA romance, but it's also kind of a coming of age like a music competition story also. And while I wasn't a piano kid, a lot of it I was drawing on my experiences of doing these sort of very high-powered classical music competitions.
See, I was spared that. I didn't do that stuff.
Yeah.
So do you still play cello? Yeah?
I do, yeah. I still play. And I've played on, some stuff that I've written for TV and things like that. But I basically just I can't play enough to kind of have that be my main career.
Right. That's very taxing.
It is, yes. And I basically got told oh, your wrists are really loosely put together, and there's kind of nothing that I can really do about that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've had carpal tunnel surgery, so I understand it, believe me. And I don't play that much anymore. I didn't finish a music degree. My parents convinced me that I needed to major in something that was more stable and would earn a living, you know. So, but I'm still in two bands. I will never quit, but that's flute and piccolo. And I did actually get to play the piano at the Kennedy Center.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, that
That's
was in
very cool.
2013. We did a trip and I got to play a 9 foot Steinway. And then, you know, of course, my director had to pop my bubble because I was like, I played a 9 foot Steinway. And he goes, hey, Cease, don't think that was their best instrument that they dragged out for you. I went, I'm not stupid, Art, okay? But still, I have a
Yeah.
picture of me with the, you know, because those are hard to find in Lodi. You know, I've played a zillion
Yeah.
pianos, but
Yeah.
a 9 foot,
Yep.
no. So
Yep.
anyway, so you're still composing
Hmm.
and you do music for television shows, movies, video
Yeah.
games.
I still, yeah, sort of my other job is that I write music. I do a lot of sort of additional music for, I've done on a lot of Disney shows.
Oh,
So yeah, a lot of, I sort of fell into animation a little bit. So I do a lot of animated stuff, a lot of stuff for kids, and yeah, which is
so
quite
now
fun. It's a
are
that's
you the
like very
person that they run the thing and then you write like the heroes getting chased, background
yeah,
sounds,
yep.
all that kind of ambient, I guess, is that the word I would use?
Yes, like the underscore is basically what it's called. Yeah.
Underscore.
So
Okay.
it's all the orchestra stuff going on in the background.
Wow. Now, do you conduct?
So I do. A lot of what I write basically just stays on computers. So it's all, these days it's all computers that you're sort of programming to sound like a live orchestra. So a lot of shows don't have the budget to do live orchestra. So I have done some stuff with orchestra. I did some music on an animated movie that recorded in London, which was really exciting.
Ooh, yeah.
And I've done some stuff with players in Los Angeles, which is also really great. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, that's always the most fun, is to get to work with live musicians, because there's just nothing that ever really replaces it. But yeah, I do also, a lot of my job is writing the music, but then also making the music sound as much like live players as I can.
Okay, good for you, but I kind of hate that because obviously I would like to see musicians, you know.
Hmm. Oh no, I do too. It's very complicated. I mean, I I pursued composing partly because I love working with musicians, and it was a way to stay connected to musicians. And it's sad when I don't get to do that more.
Well, and I was just talking with Matt Winton the other day, who's also another author, but he's been a screenwriter, and he
Hmm.
was talking about how there's not much being produced, and a lot of people are out
Yeah.
of work. That how the industry has changed so much, and
Hmm.
now we're hitting on another aspect of that, and that's the music part of it, which of course is obviously the near and dear to my heart part of it.
Yeah. 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 No, the industry's in a lot of contraction right now, and it is across the board, including in music stuff. Yeah.
Heartbreaking. Well, we'll see. Hopefully, the future will have more gigs available for people. And there's always, people like me, amateurs, who can, go to
Hmm.
community band rehearsals on Monday and Tuesday nights and,
Yep. Yep.
take a trip now and then. And we have a lot of old people in our bands. It's kind of funny because we welcome kids, of course, seventh, eighth grade, high school, whatever, because we're trying to encourage young musicians,
Hmm.
right? But then us old farts come in and they kind of look at us like, oh, but that's okay because we prove you can do it the rest of your life. Whether or not you get paid doesn't matter. You can still make music,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep.
So, and believe me, it just costs me money at this point because then we go on trips. But,
Yeah. It's
you
not the
know,
least expensive hobby, but it's a lot of fun.
it's okay. I love it. I will never quit, as long as my fingers can,
Hmm.
and I got some air in my lungs, I'll be right there tooting away. In fact, we have the 4th of July coming up. So you know what I'll be doing when we get off here. I have to practice the Stars and Stripes.
Oh yeah.
The piccolo thing. So anyway,
Yeah.
let's talk about writing. So are you a plotter or are you a pantser?
I am a plotter, but publishing has made me a plotter, I would say. Like when I wrote the first book that ended up being my debut, I sort of had it plotted. Like I've always been somebody who like I know the end. I know like where I'm going. I know the overall arc of where I'm going. But I didn't necessarily have every sort of stage mapped out in the middle. Um and now just kind of the way that publishing works, like for the House of Now and Then, for example, I had written the In Between bookstore and my publisher was like, okay, well, what do you want to do? Like show us what you want to do next. But at that stage, what you often do for an option is you basically write a few chapters and then send them a synopsis. Like that's what they want. They want to like see the whole story, like where are you going with it? But then here are a few sample chapters. Um, and so once I started working like that more, where I'm showing the publisher what I want to do next, um, I kind of needed to be able to plot the whole thing out because I needed to show this is the story that I had in mind. Um, and I kind of hated it at first, but once I got used to doing that, I found it really helpful because it was all this time that I would spend sort of mucking about trying to figure out a story as I went. Like I just didn't have to spend that time anymore. And it meant that I could write something so much faster. And it also meant that I could sort of show a proof of concept and like find the problem parts of the story earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's been really helpful. I'm somebody who tends to think like really pragmatically about what I want to do and where I want my career to go, ideally, hopefully. Um, and that's been very helpful with my agent also to just be like, here's something that I'm thinking about. Like, here's a synopsis. Here's like what I'm thinking about, what I might want to do next. Like, what do you see? Is this something that you think would fit well in the market? Like, is there a publisher you can envision for this? Um, so I find that very helpful because I think I'm somebody who doesn't get super precious about something at the idea stage. So if it's like I've just come up with it, like here's an idea, and if someone tells me like, my agent or editor is just sort of like, well, I'm not sure that this is quite what the market wants right now, or, not quite what we're looking for, I can be like, okay, it's dead to me, moving on.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sort of saved myself getting really in the weeds with something. So yeah, I do plot a lot now, but it does still change. Like I feel like on just about every project, I hit a point where I'm like, okay, well, this is what it says in the synopsis, but now that I'm here, I realize I have to tweak something a little bit. It doesn't quite work now that I know the characters more and stuff like that. So it's like I feel like I'm a plotter with some flexibility that like I'll still change things as I go sometimes.
Do you sometimes, and I've heard this from other authors, they're writing along and they think they've got it all planned out, and then this character just shows up and says, "Put me in your book." Does that happen?
Not a ton to
Okay.
me. I feel like I feel like I'll sometimes have like it's more often like an event that I'll think will work in the synopsis. It'll look like it works in the synopsis. And then it's just the like getting to know the characters more or something. I'll be like, this isn't quite the right thing to happen, or this belongs in another book or something like
Mm.
that. But I start with characters a lot. I think I'm like very that's what drives a book for me. Like no matter how much plot you have in it, it's really the characters. And so like maybe a side character will come in who I don't expect, but mostly like yeah, I feel like I have to know my characters really well when I'm going in because so much of it is just like their voices and their like how
Mhm.
they're telling the story and how they're reacting to things. Um so yeah, I think it's more that like events change in the story for me rather than specific characters.
All right. So you mentioned something interesting I want to talk about because the publishing industry, I hear over and over, is a tough, well, number one, it's a tough industry. And so is
Yeah.
music. Boy, you picked two of the hardest,
I
buddy.
really
Two
did,
really
yeah.
hard. And you must love a challenge. Anyway, no, you just go where your heart takes you and your creativity, right? Um, you mentioned earlier you didn't think that a book with a trans man as the lead character would sell. Have you seen a change? Because I'm observing, and I will tell you, because I am older. 10 years ago, I don't know that I would have seen this cover.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so, what have been your observations and experiences with publishing and being more accepting and diverse?
Yeah, I think this is partly why I started in YA. I love writing for teenagers. I think like
Mhm.
just being a teenager is such a I mean, it's awful when you're living in it, but it also makes for really great stories because it's all about like trying to, every emotion is really big and it's all about trying to find your place in the world. But I will say, I also think that that's YA has consistently been on the cutting edge of being more diverse.
Mhm.
And that's been true in certain other genres. I think romance has done a very good job of making room for more different kinds of perspectives and people centering themselves in stories. But YA was really, I think, on like, had more of a surge in queer content earlier.
Mhm.
Um, and obviously, like a really big one was Becky Albertalli and the Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda. Like once that sort of broke out in 2015, 16, something like that, then we started to get a real rise
Mhm.
in queer content.
Right.
And I think, in like I think any time in publishing where there's like a little bit of like the door opens a little bit, there are
Mhm.
always some identities that are going to be coming through a little bit later. And I think that's true with trans identities that, the
Mhm.
first one you had was sort of the gay boys, the gay men. And then we started to have more diversity and more diversity.
Right.
And a lot of trans femme rep is still really lagging behind everything else, certainly in the YA space. Um, so there have started to be more. That is definitely why I started in YA, because I was just like, oh, okay, this is a place I see this kind of stuff starting to happen more.
Uh-huh.
And I think adult fiction in general has lagged slightly behind that. Partly like it's not even about like the representation, but the kinds of stories that are being told. So I think you would have longer ago found stuff that was like, okay, well, this has a trans character, but it's going to be a tragedy. It's going to be about how hard it is to be trans. It's going to be about like, yeah, just like the all of the bigotry and all focused on that. And that was something that I knew I didn't want to write. I just feel like partly because it was never stuff I wanted to read. Those stories are hugely
Right.
important,
Right.
um, but I don't need to like I think every trans person I know has had some experience of where it's very hard to be trans. And a
Yeah.
lot of times I just want a fun story about something else. Um, so like that was what I really wanted to write. And I think like YA made spaces for those stories earlier.
Mhm.
It's starting to happen in adult. It's starting to happen in certainly in certain genres. I haven't seen it reach the mainstream a ton. Um, but that's kind of I think where I've always been pushing is like what I really want is the types of stories that I love to read, which feel like they're sometimes they have fantastical elements, but they're sort of what I would call mainstream commercial fiction. I mean, the thing I say, like I say it half as a joke, but I'm half serious, is that what I really want is like Jurassic Park, but with queer people. Like I want something that's just like a blockbuster, fun, story
Yeah.
that just happens to have queer and trans people in it because we exist, rather than like the story is completely about that. Um,
Well, and I'm glad
and
you went there because this was my feeling reading the book. I was reading a book about human beings,
mhm,
and then they just happened to be in this particular community. And to me, yeah, so, it's
yeah,
like I was interested in them, and I don't mean that as an insulting. So, yes, I care, but you mean it's like that's not what the whole focus is. This is a
yeah.
story about people first
Mhm.
and foremost. And the part of the synopsis I missed was that Harlow was a trans man.
I mean, that's the part that I'm sort of okay with you missing in a sense that like, the in-between bookstore, which was my adult debut, that one is more about identity because it is sort of about this character who's meeting himself pre-transition and like what that's like,
Sure.
what would you tell your younger self? But with this book, with the House of Now and Then even more, I very deliberately didn't want any of the plot points to hinge on the character being trans. So I don't. It would not be the same story without that. It would not be the same story with the type of queer community he's in.
Right.
Um, but everything that he's really dealing with as sort of core conflicts in the story aren't about that. Um, and that felt really important to me. And I think like publishing has made some strides there, and that's been really good.
Yeah.
And we're also seeing the backlash now that the
Mhm.
number of book bans has
Oh yeah.
really sharply increased. A
Yeah.
lot of it targeting queer books. There's been stuff attempted it's still happening at the national level of sort of federal book ban attempts. And one of the main things they're going after is any representation of trans people in literature. And so that's been hard. I think a lot of it is like, even if publishers aren't necessarily being like, okay, well, we're not going to buy this because it's trans, you just start to see some of the like, they are first and foremost, and this isn't like, there are a lot of wonderful editors. This is not pointed at any one thing. It's pointed at the sort of company model of this is a profit run industry, and they're going to start dialing back into what are their safer profits. So, I think like for me, the question has never been if the audience is there, because the
Oh yeah.
audience is very clearly there. I
Yes.
meet them all the time.
Yes.
Um, it's more whether there is enough sort of support for the book that the publisher sees, that then they will continue to publish those types of books. And especially in the sphere of sort of younger readers, where school and library sales matter hugely for a book to be profitable, that's where the book banning stuff can start to get really bad, because then
Yeah.
if schools and libraries aren't able to stock the book, it's no longer profitable for the publisher, if you're talking about kids books. Yeah.
Right. And I know that libraries are a huge component, that they monitor that.
Yes.
It's a big
For
deal.
every
Like,
book.
yeah.
Yeah, for every book, which is why, like, I've had readers say, like, well, I can't afford to buy your book or something. And I'm just like, I don't care. Like, request it from the library. Libraries, buy copies. And then if that copy gets checked out a bunch and it wears out, they'll buy another copy. Like that also matters hugely for authors and their support. Yeah.
But your books are not super expensive. And, this one, I bought this one, but I read a widget that the publisher
hmm
sent me, a NetGalley widget, which was
Yeah.
obviously free. And then what I do, well, I'm fortunate that I can do this. I buy books that I really love that I want to pass on to my friends. So I went on Amazon, and I think this one, it's a paperback. It was, I think, like $13 or something. It was not real expensive, which is, it's not like I had to go plunk $30 down for a hardcover. And you can
Yeah.
always get a Kindle edition. So books
Yes.
are, you can, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I think in some cases they can be budgeted in.
Yeah.
Believe me, I get people are struggling right now. I'm not going to minimize that. I'm not.
Yeah.
Um, but I also think that we have to push back, and I mean we, the reading public, and say, no, I want these books, and we have to send the message that we want them so that they stay free and available to everybody. And by free, I mean not banned, because a book
Correct.
ban
Yeah.
is, I don't, that's obscene. I don't want
Yeah,
to talk
no,
about
there's statistics that are like, I'm on the board actually of this organization, Authors Against Book Bans, and we have statistics that like something like 70% of people don't support banning books. They're
that. Right,
anti-book bans, but a lot
right.
of this stuff happens purely because people don't know it's happening. And so like keeping an eye on what's going on with your school board meetings, keeping an eye on like what's going on in your town, but also like what's going on at the federal level now that they're trying some of the stuff at the federal level. Like all of that, like, being present and showing support for the books, and also like what's going on in your town, like locally, is huge. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to keep buying these books, and we're going to keep reading them. And I'm so glad that you said all this, because like I said, I was reading it, just these are human beings, and they just
Yeah.
are having this life and this experience. And like I said, I missed the part about Harlow. I was probably a third of the way into it. I went, oh, all right. So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was so taken with the cover and everything.
It's
So
a gorgeous cover. I'm so happy with how it turned out. It just looks like summer to me, which is great, because I think like when I wrote this book, I really wanted it to be like, those like summer beach reads that are like a lot of
right.
fun, but just with queer characters.
It looks like a painting I would hang up in my living room because
Yeah,
it's
totally.
so vibrant. And then, of course, there's the little magical cottage. And
Hmm.
this would be Harlow, and we won't say who because I don't want to spoil anything, but
Yeah, that's fair.
he's
Yeah.
a he's a very handsome, lovely character. Okay, so let's talk about the story. So you have a trans man named Harlow, and his
Hmm.
life is kind of falling apart.
Yes.
Give us
He's
the
gone
give us the
through.
pitch.
Okay. So yeah, the book is about a trans man named Harlow. He's in his early 30s and he's kind of his life is falling apart in that like he's just gone through a huge breakup of a long-term relationship. So he and his boyfriend broke up after 7 years. And he's kind of a little adrift in terms of job stuff. He like has a job he sort of fell into, but he had been on this path to become an academic, and then that sort of didn't work out how he envisioned. And so he rents a suspiciously cheap cottage on Cape Cod to just kind of get away for the summer, uh, which is owned by this slightly eccentric trans woman named Dina. Um, and
Who I
when he
love.
gets there, yeah, she was a
I
lot
love
of fun to
Dina.
write.
She's
She
great.
was very fun to write.
And wait, she
Um,
owns a store and it's called Queer Punks.
Queer punks, yes,
Punx.
yes.
Love it.
Uh, so when he gets to the cottage, he discovers that the cottage is a little bit magical, and in each room is someone from his past, and no one else can see them, and they're sort of stuck reliving moments of their shared history together, kind of on loop. And he has to figure out what to do about this, like why they're there and how to get rid of them. And then in one room is someone that he doesn't know, who turns out to be the landlady's Dina's nephew Nathan. And that room works a little bit differently, and I won't say too much about that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it was I have been to Cape Cod a lot. I go there with my partner every year, and it was just like I really wanted to set a book there. There's a way that like when I'm there, it feels like someplace where you could think of something slightly magical happening.
Mhm.
And it's also Provincetown, which features in the book quite a lot, has this history of being a very gay friendly place.
Right.
And so I wanted to have that. Even the store that Dina owns is lightly based on a store that's actually there. That just has a lot of this like, it's like where all the old lesbians shop. I don't know, it's great. Um
I
but
gotta
like,
visit it.
I
Sounds like
wanted,
my kind of
yeah,
place.
yeah, no, it's great. It's just all these like, old bumper stickers and t-shirts and stuff like that. um
My era.
but yeah. But like that's yeah, so I felt like it was sort of a natural place to set a book like this. My agent and I nicknamed this book The Therapy House as like kind of the working title, because it's a little bit what it is. It's like,
Yeah.
here's your summer escape, except it's all of the stuff that you actually need to work through that you haven't worked through. I don't
Right.
think it's a spoiler to say that. That's pretty obvious from the beginning.
Right.
um but yeah, then like it's a book that's very driven by characters and sort of their personal dramas, their issues with each other. I sort of thought of it almost a little bit like a mystery when I was plotting it, that there are things that Harlow kind of needs to learn about the other people around him that kind of end up driving a lot of the story. The things that they say or don't say, and that he does or doesn't know about them. Yeah.
Yeah. Harlow is really a fascinating character in many ways because when we meet Harlow, I'm trying to remember, like around, I want to say like 31,
He's 31. Yeah.
31.
Hmm.
Okay. And so he's lived a little bit.
Hmm.
He's already got a PhD.
Yep.
He's gone all the way through college, but
Hmm.
he had this horrible PhD advisor.
Yeah.
Um, and like you said, his dreams of being an academic didn't come to fruition. So on the one hand, I find him contradictory because he's a very driven, he's goal oriented,
Hmm.
he's obviously brave,
Hmm.
he's been through the transition process, right? So
Yep.
that tells you something about him right off the bat. But
Yeah.
then on the other hand, he sort of just floats and he's
Yeah.
indecisive and he's sort of lets life happen to him instead of going
Yes.
out and making things happen. Do I have this right? Because
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
that's how I saw him. And so I had to keep reading because I was like, dude, what's up with this? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, he was in some ways he was a challenging character to write because I think one thing that drives the story is a character's agency, and Harlow doesn't honestly have that much of it at the beginning. He's really
No.
stuck. But I think what I was really interested in writing and sort of exploring was, I think, something that feels true for a lot of the people I know, kind of my generation, that I sort of describe it as the like formerly labeled as gifted millennials. Like it's this sort of, like if you just follow this path,
Right.
you'll get something great at the end. And then, the financial crisis happened and, there aren't the academic jobs out there that there used to be. And, all these sort of things changed in the world. And um, so I think that's kind of been my approach to writing sort of for adults,
Mhm.
has been thinking about the lives of me and my friends and kind of how those have turned out and how they've been different than what we maybe thought. Um, and so I really wanted to write a character. It's like, well, I did all the right things. I did all of the things that I thought I was supposed to do. And um, it didn't go like how
Right.
I wanted or how I envisioned. But I think I was also interested in like I certainly absorbed a lot of the mindset of being entirely career focused, of being, which like I still am. I am more career focused than I think Harlow ever is. Um, but I wanted to write a character who kind of finds something else in life that matters at least as much, and that maybe it's okay to have a career that's like it's just your job, and that's fine. Um, but that isn't what makes your sense of home.
Right.
And for Harlow, it's about like, oh, you actually have to find the right place and you have to find the right people. And that he's a character who has shaped what he wants around other people a lot of his life, and that's sort of that's kind of like there's a lot in the story that's like weaving in sort of what happened in his past relationship and why they didn't work out.
Hmm.
I don't think it's a huge spoiler to say his ex is one of the people that's stuck in the house with him. um and
And I'm
he's
sorry, but some of those scenes are hilarious.
I was trying to think very deliberately, like, what is the worst possible room to have your ex stuck in? Like a sort of ghostly version of your ex, and it's the bathroom. So
Right.
Harlow is his
And this
his ex
poor
is
guy's
stuck in the
just trying to
bathroom.
take a shower and his ex won't leave.
Yep,
I was
yep,
laughing so hard because I thought, that would be hell.
yeah, yeah. No, it's very much the bad place. But I think like, I mean, what I love about I think what I loved about writing the story was that it was a chance to like deal with some grief and deal with some things that don't work out in your life the way you expect, but also be
Right.
really funny. Like I wanted it to be a story where you could sort of laugh at the situation too.
Yeah.
Um
There is a lot of
yeah,
humor,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
But you made a good point though, this idea, and I think this is important for people like me to read books and watch movies that, explore this. And that's this idea of the American dream.
Yeah.
It's really, really different. And I guess my children are millennials. So
Mhm.
Robert's 39. God, I'm so old. I'm
Mhm.
a 39-year-old child. And Matthew's 34. Their experience of, reaching out for something in this country is so different than mine because
Mhm.
I'm a late baby boomer. Now they're
Mhm.
calling us Generation Jones. We're
Mhm.
the second wave. We were too young to go to Vietnam, but we lived through all of it, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
Watergate and all the rest. Got up and watched Neil Armstrong walk on the moon.
Mhm.
We're that group. My sister was the original baby boomers. Um, and we got this. You go to college, you get a good job, you get a pension, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And those things have worked fine for me and a lot of people my age range, but it's not working out so much for you guys. And
Yes.
sometimes it's hard for us to understand, well, why don't you just do this? And people
Yep.
are saying, because that doesn't work anymore. You got to
Yeah.
understand. It's not the same world. I did not grow up in a world with the internet and cell phones.
Hmm.
You
Yep.
know, like I got on my bike and my mom trusted I'd get home.
Yep. Yeah, I think like that. Well, and I think a lot of the when I started writing sort of more adult fiction, um, I was realizing that a lot of me and my peers had kept reading books for young adults because we kind of felt like there wasn't adult fiction where we saw our own experiences a
Hmm.
lot.
Hmm.
Just felt like you sort of had this gap where it was like there were books that um, were the characters were our age, but they were having vastly different life experiences than what we were having. And that ended up being a really fun thing to try to write about. That like what are the experiences that are sort of universal or can often be universal for kind of my generation and for me and my friends. But I think like something I've tried to think about with both this and with the in between bookstore is that I want there to be something in the book that does feel like it can be universal to everybody. So I sort of think like, with the in between bookstore, I think just about everybody's been like, well, gosh, if I met my younger self, what would I say? And with the House of Now and Then, I think everybody has things that they have never really managed to like deal with in their
Yeah.
life and the things they
Yeah.
haven't ever really managed to let go of. So, I want it to feel like there's something that everybody can access a little bit, but then it is about this really specific experience, both of the character's age and then for these characters, like a thing that I was also really thinking about a lot was I was feeling like I have no sense of how to get older, partly because I don't see anybody like me doing it. There are so few trans people that I'm aware of at all. But then, you really don't have many visible elders in the community. And I
Oh,
started to
that's
think a lot
interesting.
about, that you don't really have many queer visible elders at all. There's a really powerful image that I remember seeing some years ago where the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus did a concert. And it's this image of sort of the original members of the chorus who survived the AIDS epidemic. And there's like
Right.
three of them wearing white. And then everyone else in the chorus is wearing black, and that's like the number that they lost, that like they lost most of the group. And it's like a really really powerful image because it just shows like how many people you lost in some communities
Right.
during AIDS. And I think like that was very much on my mind as I was writing this book. There are a lot of queer elders in this book. It's sort of Dina is, in her
Mm.
60s, and it's like all of her friends who've kind of had this whole other history. And it felt very important for me to kind of to have that represented in this book as well. But like my partner got me this wonderful book, which I will just shout out because everyone should check it out, called To Survive on This Shore by Jess Dugan. And it's basically it's one of those sort of coffee table books. It's a whole photo essay, and it is completely trans elders. So it's all trans people over 50. And the author slash photographer took beautiful pictures of them, and then they all sort of wrote essays about their experience. And so there's these normal people living their normal lives, but you just don't see it that much. So it was very, I think with this book, it was kind of I was both trying to think about where my generation is now, but then
Yeah.
also thinking about just the sort of roadmap that I don't have, instead sort of trying to figure out where I fit in the world as Harlow is trying to figure out where he fits in the world. Um, yeah, that if I think I felt like if I was writing a story that is ultimately about figuring out how to let go of things, that you kind of also needed this like past that I think every queer person interacts with at some point, in sort of thinking about their own identity.
You know, that's really interesting. I had never realized that, you did not have a group of elders that you could really look to. And I'm only thinking of a couple that are, famous.
Right.
One in particular, I doubt, well, I don't know. I don't know if she's a role model or not. We don't need to go there, but um, based on her voting history, maybe not. Um, all I'm going to say about that. Anyway, so that's a really interesting point. But to me, what this book is about is coming home,
Yes.
finding home.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to spoil anything. Harlow comes out okay in the end. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes.
And
Oh
that
yeah.
was
It's definitely a
that was
book with a happy
important.
ending.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because from the very beginning, people are going to take Harlow into their hearts. They just are. And then there's this whole magical element. But at the core of it, like you say, Harlow's got some stuff to work through. And
Yes.
again, it's not a spoiler to say one of the people he is dealing with is his father. That was a very troubled relationship for a number of reasons. And everybody can relate to having a parent that they had to work, stuff through. I think
Yeah.
that's a universal human thing. And then you
Yeah.
got this horrible thesis advisor.
Yeah.
God, I just wanted to strangle that woman. Then you have his recent ex, Jackson. And, he's coming to terms with how he even got into the relationship in the first place. It's a whole complicated deal,
Yeah.
And in the midst of all that, he's trying to figure out his future. Is he going back to Boston? Or is he staying somewhere, on the Cape? And he's got this crazy cuckoo house that he's trying to figure out, am I losing my marbles?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's just you give the guy a lot to deal with. And
Yeah.
and then Nathan comes along, and Nathan's got a lot to deal with. He's a whole layered, complicated guy. And he's got his aunt, of course, Dina, who adores him, but sometimes I think is a little frustrated with him.
Yeah, they're a little too similar sometimes, I think.
There's enough human drama in there to keep this story, holding people's interest, which again is what do we want ultimately? We just want a good story.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it has meant a lot to me to see how much many readers have really loved Nathan. Like, he's kind of a disaster. This is the character who is Dina's nephew, and who Harlow meets both in the cottage in one of the rooms, but also outside it as a real person. And that's kind of the romance that drives the book, or a romance that drives the book. And he's a disaster. He's very not okay in a lot of ways, but I think, like, I really love writing his relationship with Harlow, and I think that there is, this is absolutely one of the things where, like, well, I knew in the synopsis when I was writing it, like, this is sort of the main things that are going to happen, but it took me writing the book to understand why they work. Like what they really need from each other, kind of. And I think, like, there is something about, that I love about two characters who are kind of broken in these various ways, but they fit together in the ways that really matter.
And they do. And it's very sweet. It's very tender and it's very sweet. And neither one of them has a mean bone in their body.
Yeah.
I mean, I would adopt either one of them. They're just, that's why I think that's why it's magical and it's enchanting. And I'm not a romance reader, dude.
Yeah.
It's not my thing at all. It's boring, first of all. A lot of those books is like, okay, I know the plot here. But this is, you have so much else that goes into the romance, and it's nuanced and layered, and then I can get into it. And it's just beautifully done. If you don't get some awards for this, then there's no justice.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
I do. And I want everybody to go out and buy it and read it. I'm just going to hold it up 1,005 times because it's so beautiful. I love it. Okay, so tell me, what are you working on now? Is there a new book? Because first of all, I'm going to go back and I'm going to buy the In Between bookstore as soon as we get off of here. But what are you working on? Is there a new book coming out?
I am sort of between contracts. I haven't sold anything else yet. So I am working on another young adult book. I feel like anxious to say too much about it because, again, I haven't sold it. I haven't finished writing it. That one is a kind of genre leap for me. I think I started to feel it's a little hard to write trans teenagers in the real world right now. The real world is not a very nice place for them.
No, it's not.
But I felt like I needed more of an escape as I was writing. So I am writing a dystopian book, but it is also a heist. So it is a young adult book that is a dystopian heist book.
Oh,
So I'm working on that. Very different. And then I have a few ideas floating around for a next adult book that I want to pitch my publisher, but I haven't totally narrowed down exactly what I want to do on that front yet.
okay.
But
Well,
yeah,
this one just came
planning
out,
on it.
so you
It
know,
did, yeah.
I think was it May that it came out?
Yeah, May 19th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one's still kind of fresh off the press, and I'm sure readers are still finding it. And if I have anything to do with it, a few more will find it. Um, all right. So you mentioned the one book that your partner gave you.
Hmm.
Tell us, people always want to know what authors are reading. Have you
Yeah,
read something good, a couple, two or three books recently that you would recommend?
sure. I mean, I do feel like I have this problem where when I'm deep in the middle of drafting something, which is where I am right now, I can read very little because it's
Yeah,
like it all gets in my head too much. So I
right.
am sort of in one of those periods where I feel like I'm reading very little. um, but I can say like a few books that I really love that I think are worth are very much worth checking out. And they're across age spectrums because I do still read a lot of young adult books. I have a lot of friends who write young adult books. So one of those young adult books that I will mention is called The Summer of Bitter and Sweet by Jen Ferguson.
Heard of it.
Um, yeah, it's about a sort of First Nations, like Indigenous teen in Canada, kind of. It's very much a coming of age book, but I think she's somebody who writes, yeah, just like writes interpersonal drama very, very well. So definitely recommend that book. I also recommend Where You See Yourself by Claire Forrest, which is also a sort of coming of age YA book. It's about a character who is a wheelchair user, kind of navigating the college admissions process.
Oh,
Also very good. Also like sort of like the way I write, like tackling big feelings, but with a lot of humor. She has very good humor in her books. So definitely recommend that. And then I am also, let's see, what there was another book I was going to recommend. Oh, I feel like this one's a little bit older, but I loved this book when I read it. Lily and the Octopus by Stephen Rowley, which is
oh,
sort of the
I've heard of
first
Stephen
book.
Rowley. Yeah.
Yes, which is the first book that I read. I want to say it's a little older now. It came out in like 2016 or 18, something like that. But it was the first book that I read as a grown up um, that had a character who was queer in it, and it was not about that at all. It's just the character just happens to be a gay man,
Uh-huh.
and the everything else in the book is about something else. Um, and I that was very meaningful to me when I read it. And then I'll shout out one more, which is Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall, which is absolutely a romance. And I am also somebody who does not always read romance.
Right.
This is one of the funniest books that I have ever read. It just made me laugh so much. And it is one of those romance novels that feels like it's about a lot of other things at the same time. Um, and it's like it has all of these things that feel very romance novels. It's about these two guys who agree to sort of like pretend to date each other, and then obviously they actually fall in love. But it's just got such a good voice to it, and the narrator is so fun to be with. Even as he's like a disaster human, but he's so fun to be with that. I just like I don't always read books that fast. I'm also a pretty slow reader, but I read that one really fast.
Oh,
It's
okay.
a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
see, that's the kind of romance I could get into where it's, got some characters that I really can enjoy, have a good laugh,
Yeah.
dive into their emotional space,
Hmm.
as opposed to just will they or won't they, and will they end up
Yes.
together? Because
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah. No, this one, it's just, it's so like, I actually haven't listened to the audiobook, but I have to imagine the audiobook is really fun for that one because it's one of these characters who's just such a fun narrator that I would imagine it's really fun to listen to also.
isn't Stephen Rowley the one that wrote the Gungle?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's why the name
That's
clicked
his
with
one
me.
that sort of became much more famous.
Right.
But I have a lot of love for Lily and the Octopus. It's a weird book in some ways. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I felt that it was a book that was very kind to all its characters. It had a lot of empathy for all its characters, and I really appreciated that.
Excellent. Edward, it has been delightful talking with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is just so much fun. I hope that a lot of people will watch the replay and go out and get the book. And I'm
Thank
going to
you.
get your other book, and then maybe we can chat about that one again in the future.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I can't wait I'm really getting into the magical realism.
There's some good stuff out there that's been in that vein. It's like, it's just enough different from the real world that it's like fun and escapist to write and to read.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't anticipate going into that genre a lot, but it's been really fun.
Well, and I've started reading some fantasy, which I had never read in my life. But I think it's a combination of age, and I think it's the way the world is right now. I find myself wanting, it's a tug of war. I want to stay up on the news, and I have MS Now on a lot. Like I just will turn it on and have it on in the background. In fact, I was just telling somebody the other day, I practiced law in this room for 20 months because, we all got sent home during COVID, right?
Yeah.
So I had to figure out how to get another desk in here. It was just ridiculous, but I had like 2 desks, like an L thing going. So I had my, my work over here, and then where we are, I would come in the morning and I would put on MSNBC on the monitor on my personal computer and just keep it on in the background because it was COVID and I was, checking headlines and stuff,
Yeah.
And I got into this habit of just sort of having it on in the background that I've never really gotten out of, even though I retired and, So when I'm home, I have it on a lot, but I find myself muting it more and more because it's just too much.
Yeah.
And so I realized in the last year or so, I'm reaching more and more to read to escape, which I think is good for my mental health because some of
I think that's what a lot of
so
people are
ugly.
doing.
I just have to turn it off.
Yeah. Yep. No, I think it's like I think that's why I have written some of the books that I've written also, is that it is, it's not a fun time to exist as a trans person in the United States right now. But reading and then also writing these books, where again, like you have just a little bit of magic and you have a community and you have something that, I don't want it to feel like it's not realistic, but to also just kind of, be just enough escape to feel like, it can feed you a little bit to keep going.
But we do still need to stay grounded. And I sometimes am so shocked when I see things on the news because I think I take living in California for granted sometimes. I've lived here since I was 6 months old. That's when my parents moved from South Dakota. And, I worked with the state of California. I was with the Department of Fair Employment and Housing for 7 years and then went over to corrections for another 14. California has the broadest civil rights protections of any state in the union.
Yeah.
Bar none.
Yeah.
The Fair Employment and Housing Act is the broadest. It's broader than ADA, anything else. And we were one of the first states to get, LGBTQIA plus rights enacted into law. And there's still a lot of stuff that goes on here that shouldn't, but I am just floored sometimes when I hear things that are going on because I think, but that's illegal. And then I go, oh, not there, it isn't.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
And so we need to keep fighting. We need to keep reading these kinds of books. We need to keep supporting authors in that community and, in all the various communities, we need to read diverse books and support authors from a variety of communities. And we need to push back on book bans and keep reminding people, no, this is America.
Yep.
This
you should be able to read whatever you want.
Crap should not be going on here. This is not what my father went to World War II to fight for. And I keep harping on that because that's my generation. And I know that a lot of millennials go, Mom, stop talking about World War II. I used to say that to my mother. Moms, we've heard the stories. And you know what? If my mother could tell me some more of them right now, I would kill to hear more. Because we must, I'm going to do a video about this. I was listening to an author, and they were talking about they think that the market for World War II historical fiction is saturated, and I'm like, how can that ever be? No.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be reading about Vietnam. We need to be reading about the civil rights fights, and we need to be reading The House of Now and Then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will also please, if you want to, follow Authors Against Book Bans on social media. And I will also mention that if you look, I think Book Riot has some good articles about this. There's some really good articles about about some of the national federal book banning bills that are trying to go through. One is HR 7661 and the other is HR 8705, which would be especially bad for a lot of teaching about the civil rights movement and stuff like that.
Right.
So definitely, if you have capacity, call your reps about them, because
I'm very lucky.
They need to know that people are not in support. Yeah.
Yes, I'm very lucky. We have reps in California who would never vote for that. Never.
Yeah, but I think a lot of what we've been finding is that even the Democrats don't necessarily know that this stuff is happening. It's just not on their radar. So it's always good to hear, even if you have a Democratic rep, for them to know that you're worried about it is always a good thing.
Yeah, well, the senators from California, I should say. There's certainly representatives around, because, California is huge, and there's so many there are representatives in other areas. And yes, you're right. People need to call and need to reach out and make sure they know how they feel about it. That's true.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go because I know you have an event, but thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
I hope you're on the bestseller list.
Thank you.
Are we ever going to see Harlow again?
Probably not. Most books like this tend to be like standalones from the publisher. But I do still, I don't always think about my characters for a long time after I write them. Sometimes I kind of close the door and I'm done. And I do still really enjoy thinking about Harlow and Nathan. They have stuck with me. I'm just going to imagine them having a happy life. I hope you do. I hope people do. I feel like that would be really wonderful to know about. I think they'd have some kids. Yeah, or I mean, they've got one half feral cat. It's increase from there. Yeah, but I could see them having a boy and a girl, and I think that would be great. So anyway, on that happy note, have a wonderful Sunday. Thank you so much. Happy the rest of Pride Month. Thank you. Yes, I know. We're going out. This will be like the Pride finale for you here. There's no finale. Pride, like I said on my video, that I queer all year. Exactly. Queer all year, and like I said yesterday, read Pride 365 days of the year. Yep. All right. Thank you. Have a great afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye. There.